Hello, photo buzzers. Andrew James here, and I thought it would be fun this week to take you through an image that I shot earlier in the week that presented me with some challenges, both at the taking stage and also at the developing stage. So let's just talk quickly about how I took the shot and what those challenges were. Well, you can see what it was. It's a guy welding some wrought iron gates, I think they are, and the challenge was I've got a very, very bright point of light. I've got a very dimly lit interior, and I need to try and somehow blend those two things together to get a satisfying result. I shot it on a 50mm lens, which was just about the right focal length here to give me enough of the environment, but still have him fairly large in the frame. And importantly, I was able to just stand back just far enough to avoid any issues with those flying sparks setting my hair on fire, or worse still, damaging the camera. And I needed to use a small aperture. I used f8 here, which might seem a little bit odd because I'm in a dimly lit interior. I've got one light source. I've got no other, I didn't put any other lighting. I just wanted to use available light. So why didn't I go to f2.8 or even 1.8 or 1.4, which I could have done with the lens that I was using? I chose f8, and I chose f8 because I wanted to get that nice starburst of light that you can see, and I think that f8 gave me the cleanest looking starburst. So f8 it was, and that meant that I had to push ISO to 800 to compensate for that lack of light, which is fine. Haven't got a problem with that. Now, in terms of shutter speed, well, I've got 160th of a second, which is fine for hand holding, and I was hand holding. And the reason that I've got 1/60th of a second is because I actually dialed in -2 stops of exposure compensation, and I did that because if we can zoom in here, I wanted to hold some detail here. Now I'm going to burn out where the welding the welding arc is just hitting the metal here. I'm going to burn that out. It's like trying to photograph directly into the sun, and I've got some burnout here, but I've still got some detail within that area there. So if I hadn't done that, I'd have had too much burnout if I hadn't used -2. But of course, using -2 exposure compensation meant a lot of the other area around has gone very, very dark. Now, some of that I don't mind. I don't mind that because it kind of frames it, but there are some areas that we're going to need to look at. Now, just in case you ever get the chance to photograph somebody welding, which is really fun to do, apart from the issues of watching for flying sparks, the other thing is obviously don't look directly into that intense light. I actually shot with a camera on autofocus rather than manual focus, which I could have done. It was an option. But with AF, what I did was I'd sort of click it onto the gloves, which is the area I used as my focus point, and then when I shouted right weld, I basically shut my eyes and I took a couple, 2, 3, maybe 4 pictures in quick succession and hope for the best. That's kind of how it worked, although I'd obviously pre-worked out the basic composition, and then it's worked pretty well on all of these. But anyway, so that's the background story to this shot. But what I needed to do was, back in Lightroom, bring out some of the detail. I wanted to play around with the white balance a little bit. I used auto white balance on the day because there was a lot of light. There's the blue light from the actual from the welding area. I've got some more orangey light from the sparks here. I've got some orangey light in the background. So I want to play around with white balance. I want to bring out a little bit of the detail in places without making it too noisy. I basically want to get it to a nice, gritty, impactful photograph, and I think that I can do that. But how? What am I going to do? What are the processes that I'm going to go through? So let's go through this as quickly as we can. And I think what we'll probably do first of all is we'll look at this area of highlight of the sort of the overexposure here, and just in the basics tab, I'm going to take highlights back a little bit. I'm not going to go too far because if I go too far it looks horrible. I can bring a lot of detail back in the background, but in the blown out area it just looks messy, doesn't it? So we need to keep that slightly soft there, but bring back in some of the detail. So about -30, something like that on highlights is fine. Happy with that. But obviously, having done that, I've actually turned that image even darker overall. So let's see what we can do about that. The obvious place to go here on a universal basis, global basis across the whole of the image, is to pull out the shadows here. So we're just going to pull out the shadows a little bit. I'm not going to go too far. I don't want to go crazy. I want to go to about plus 50, something like that. So we're beginning to get a little bit of detail back here. And I'm just going to lift exposure a fraction too, because that'll deal with everything across the scene. Again, not crazy, but maybe plus 40, something like that. So I'm constantly thinking, that's fine. I'm lifting some shadow detail. I'm making that look a little bit better, a bit closer to where I want it. But what damage am I doing? When I'm pulling out detail from the shadow, am I making it look horrible? Am I degrading the quality? So I've got to zoom in to have a look around, and no, that looks absolutely fine at that point. So I've got no issue with that at all. So now having done that, I want to have a look at the crop next, because I'm just thinking that his position, he could be a little bit tighter to that right hand side. So the obvious place to go would be to go to the crop tool, but actually I'm not going to go to the crop tool. I have shown you this before in a video, so if you didn't pick that up, then have a look back. I'm going to go to the transform tool. Here we go, and open this up, and all I'm going to do is going to take the scale slider, and I'm just going to turn that up a little bit till it just hits pretty much just the edge of his back there, or the the base of his, probably his bum actually, isn't it? Just to about there. But what I don't want to do is, because I quite like this fan over here on the left hand side, and I've now cropped it even more, that it was already slightly cropped out of the frame, but I want to get that back. So I'm going to take the X offset and I'm going to move that until I can see the edge of the frame. There it is, but just take it back perfectly on there, so it was roughly, well, almost exactly where it was. So it's only plus 4.3 on this particular image, and there I've got my crop exactly how I want it, and Lightroom has interpolated it, so I've not lost any pixels, which is what I would have done had I been using the normal crop tool, which is fine. It's fine, but I just wanted, because this is a potential, this was going to go into a magazine, I wanted to keep all those pixels in there. So so that's good. So I've done that, and I'm quite happy with that. Now, one thing I haven't done, which I really should have done right at the start, and apologies, but I'm going to do it now just as a reminder, is I'm going to put my enable profile and remove any chromatic aberrations, so my lens corrections. Just do that as a matter of course. It's a really important thing to do. So one of the things I want to do next, now what I'm really interested in here is pulling out is this. There's a nice balance to be got here between the blue-white balance that we've got from the welding arc, and then the slightly more oranginess of the sparks, plus the there's some kind of ambient lighting going on there, tungsten lighting, and I think that we could do something with that. So I'm just going to go back to the basics tab, and the first thing I think I'll do is I'm going to take temperature back to the left to make it a lot bluer. As I say, I shot in auto white balance. I don't think I said that earlier. If I did, apologies, I'm going to repeat it. I shot in auto white balance just because I didn't really know what was going to happen with colour, with all the different sort of white balances going on within the frame. So I left it on auto white balance, let the camera deal with that, sort it out later. So that's what I've done. So I'm just going to blue that up a little bit, which is great. Now that's better. I like that blueness, the cool blueness in the smoke and around the guy that's welding, Steve. Let's call him Steve, that's his name. Around Steve welding, and we're just yeah, that's better, isn't it? But I want to warm up I still want to warm up some of the scenes. So I'm actually going to take the tint slider to the right, because it's just going to put a little bit of magenta into the surrounding area. So I'm just looking for a balance. So I might even go further back on the temperature slider and then up a little bit on the tint slider till I get it where I want. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's kind of in the area, but I'm going to do one other little trick as well. I'm just going to take a brush, and then I'm just going to paint over or brush over some of the areas where there would be naturally a little bit more warm light. So that's just in these areas here, so that's around the blue light there and where the tungsten light is coming in there. If I hit 0 on the keyboard, you can just see roughly where I've done it, and I've not been too careful with it. And now I'm just going to push temperature to the temperature slider on this brush to the right to warm that up even more, and I can be pretty, look at that, I can be pretty aggressive with it. And I'm also going to push the tint slider a little bit further so that warms it up nicely. There we go. I'm actually beginning to like that. I've got this really nice contrast between the blue light and also the orangey ness and the sort of the tungsten-y type light in the rest of the area. So that's good. Remember, it's an aesthetic. There's no such thing as correct white balance here. Who knows what the correct white balance is in a craftsman's working area when he's got a welding light on and some weird tungsten light going on in elsewhere? There's no such thing. It's all about the aesthetic. Now I think it's time to start working with some other brushes on local areas, because pretty much everything we've done, most of what we've done, apart from that little bit of white balance playing around with there when bringing out the oranginess, we've done on a global, universal scale across the image. But I want to now get a brush again. So here we go. We've got a brush, and I think what I want to do is I just want to look. Let's hold on. I just need to open up my navigator. I just want to zoom in here because, as I said earlier, we've got I don't mind this little bit of burnt highlight here, but I just want to bring back a little bit of this area here. So I'm just going to take a brush, zoomed in, take a brush over that highlight area there. Won't get it all back, I don't think, but we'll get some of it back. So if I go too far, we start getting this sort of halo effect around. I could paint some of that out if I hold down Alt and then just paint over that. So you get rid of that. It's pretty straightforward, or you could just do it a little bit more carefully than I did it. Either way, so I'm just taking that back a little bit, take the exposure back a fraction as well, and there we go. It's better. It's not perfect. There's a little bit of overexposure on that, but I think that's acceptable considering the subject that we're working with. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I want to take another brush. We're going to do a couple of brushes here because I still think we can bring out some detail here. Having done a bit of work in various other areas, I think we just want to lighten up the mask area here because that's going to be the brightest part. And although I don't think I'm going to get a lot of detail back, I'm just going to add a little bit detail to Steve's coat, whatever, no, jumper, sweatshirt, that's the word I'm looking for. Come on, Andrew, stay awake. So I'll just do O to see where I brushed there. You can see where I'm brushing. I'm clearly going over some little areas. I'm doing it rather carelessly, really, but I mean, I can take those out. You can do it more carefully than me, but also if you're doing things subtly, if you're just going over the edges, it doesn't always matter if you've gone over some areas, because it's not going to make that much difference. Okay, let's go. I'm always jumping in and out of the mask mode just to see what's going on. Okay, so I've brushed over that area, and I'm just going to lift the highlights, I think, in those areas, because that's what I really want to affect. So take that up. Yep, so we're lifting some area in that main mask, but not a lot else. So I'm going to take exposure up a fraction too. We can see some details, a little bit of detail coming back down his sleeve, which is all I need. I don't want much, still want it to be quite dark. Yeah, we haven't got any halo stuff going on there, so that's pretty good. Quite happy with that now. Beginning to really work how I want it to look. But there's still something else I think that we could consider doing. Let's just get rid of our navigator panel so you can all see the frame a little bit bigger. There we go, the image a bit bigger. I think if we close down brushes, we go back to our basics panel, because what we haven't looked at yet is presence. Okay, I haven't tried. You'll probably think, well, I haven't touched contrast either. Well, actually, I think there's a lot of contrast in this, so I don't think contrast at this point is going to give us any more detail. Oh, do you know what? I've just had a little think. This is when you're doing stuff. When I'm doing a lot of these tutorials, I actually don't know what I'm going to do, and this is how I often work with an image. I just suddenly think, oh, that could do a little bit more, that could do a little less. So apologies, but I do want to go back to brushes, and I'm just going to do a little brush over this nice fan here. If you remember, I wanted to keep that in, and I just want to lighten that fraction. That's all I want to do. So highlights, taking that up a little bit, yep, makes a little bit of difference, possibly even exposure. And you know the other thing I do? I'm going to take the temperature back to the left, so it looks a little bit more blue. It's got quite some nice blueness reflected in it. I think that looks better over there, because that means we've got the blue of him on the right, we've got a little bit of oranginess in the middle, and then it goes back to blue, and there's a bit of orange above. I like that. It's these little details that make quite a bit of difference. And you know what, while I'm doing that, what the hell, this is probably going to be going on too long, but I'm just going to take a brush, and I'm going to just brush over this little bit of smoke here. I just want to bring that out. That's really nice, that area there, isn't it? So let's just bring that out again. Probably highlights, just lift it with highlights, not too far, because I don't want it to affect that middle bit, and then perhaps even with a little bit of exposure. There we go. Yes, liking that already. Sorry, I do sometimes get sidetracked with these things, I know. Right, where was I? That's right, I was trying to bring this to a close. As I said, not done any contrast, because there's plenty of contrast in there, but I do want to do something with the sliders that are in the presence, under the presence headline here within our basics tab. This is a gritty type of environmental portrait, so let's use that to our aesthetic advantage. So I'm going to first of all, I'm going to ratchet up the old texture slider. I'm going to be quite aggressive with it. Let's go to about 40 with that. Maybe that's a bit more than I normally do, but I don't care. We're going crazy. Right, clarity, I'm going to ratchet that up too. Let's see what happens when we do that. That's actually quite nice. A little bit of darkening, actually. Maybe you can't see it, but darkening within the smoke area. That's where the midtones are just sort of darkening up as we do it. Now, I'm tempted to try the dehaze slider, but no, I'm actually going to leave that. That will darken everything off a little bit, but I think we're okay on that one. Vibrance, I am going to push a little bit. Remember, vibrance is going to deal with the strongest colours in this, and that's going to be the blues, and then that orange is going to be that the blue's a lot stronger, so it's going to be the blue that gets the most impact from that. So I'm going to be fairly subtle on it. Saturation would just be horrible, so we're not even going to bother with that. And what the hell? Let's throw in Andrew's favourite. Let's do a medium contrast. I'm not even going to do it by hand this time. Oh no! Do you know what? When you do something and then you don't like it, it's just taking it too far. That's how easy it is. So I've just undone that to avoid that. Now there is one last thing I think I'm going to do. That's going to go down to the effects, and I'm going to put in a post crop vignette just to darken some of those edges off like so. And I really do think that's a much better image. Can we go back to the start? Let's have a look. That's where we started. All the detail that we want is there, but we just need to bring it out, and then we've got to there. Do you know, there is one thing, and again, this is where when you get to the end of an image and you really have to look at it, and I'm sorry if you're like thinking, oh God, I need to go to bed or something else. There's one thing that's just slightly grating on me, which I haven't dealt with, which I've sort of not looked at before, and that's this window here. It's a window at the back of his workshop that's going to some fields. And I think it's not so much, I don't mind the brightness of it, although I think we could take it down a bit so it's less of a draw to the eye. What I don't like about it here is the fact that again, we've got yet another kind of white balance going on there. So let's just brush over it. Just going to brush over that area so it's covered. Remember, if we want to see where we've covered there, so we've covered some area around it, but I'm not too fussed about that. Let's take the highlights back a little bit, so we darken it down, maybe even the exposure back a fraction so it darkens down. Yeah, that's better. But actually what I think might help most of all is take that white balance back as well. Let's get rid of that green, make it a little bit bluer, so it sort of feels more within the tonal range of what's going on. It's no longer quite as annoying to my eye as I suddenly found it right at the end there. But I am now happy that is our image. So, reminder, we were here, we're now here. Job done.